Yes, Delaware. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Today's topic is a holistic approach to protecting the vulnerable. Dr. Ernest Holmes writes in Ideals for Living, page 55, we should give of ourselves in love and in service to others, in a spirit of generosity and good fellowship. To refuse to give is to refuse to receive, for everything moves in circles. A kind word, a thoughtful act, perhaps just a smile, can help lighten the burdens of others. Terry Patton, in A New Republic of the Heart, page 59, writes, the soul of activism was captured by Pope Francis's invocation, let us be protectors of creation, protectors of God's plan, inscribed in nature, protectors of one another and of the environment. Proverbial wisdom states, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Let us use the creative power of our words and say this affirmation of truth together. I see planetary issues as a call for love in the form of prayer and action. Together in wisdom, we join hands, hearts, and minds to co-create a more kind, loving, and abundant life for all.
Thank you, Marcy. So, this is the year of spirituality in action. And our social justice principle for today is using a holistic approach to protecting and empowering the vulnerable. A holistic approach. So let's define our terms first. When we're talking about the vulnerable, I looked online and I looked for a definition that was put out by the World Health Organization, which is part of the United Nations. It's an agency that's part of the United Nations. And what they described as the vulnerable are those who are, and well, I'm going to go ahead and read it rather than try to memorize it. Children, pregnant women, elderly people, malnourished people, people who are ill. And, these are the people, and there are more as well. I'm going to name all of them and then I'll talk about the abused who suffer in silence out of fear, and that's both children and adults. Those who are touched by poverty, those who work but do not earn enough money to meet their basic needs, and the homeless who cannot afford housing, which Nancy was just talking about. The Friendship House supports the homeless. And animals who are put into human service and not treated well, as well as our whole entire planet, which Earth Justice says needs a good lawyer. So the vulnerable are those who take a relatively high share of the disease burden associated with national disasters and national emergencies, and really even in between those times. So that's what we mean when we're talking about the vulnerable. In truth, we teach in this country to be vulnerable and seek help. To be vulnerable and seek help. So we ourselves can practice that as well, which Donna brought up so beautifully in her prayer. What we're talking about today, though, is not only looking in our own lives and we're doing our work locally, but even expanding our vision beyond this to open our hearts to be as wide as the world. And that may sound really overwhelming to you, but what I remind myself in those moments is that there are many of us that can do this together. It's not just my responsibility. We can all do this together. We can all make a contribution. And there are other communities, not just our community, there are other communities out there that we can join hands with to accomplish great things. A holistic approach can be understood so beautifully by Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How many of you are aware of that? And also, it's actually morphed. Maybe the one that you learned about years ago when people responded to Abraham Maslow's idea that you have to get this need taken care of before you can do this and so on, and found out that wasn't really true, just instead decided to name all of the different levels, plus added one at the top, self-transcendence, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So this helps us understand our holistic needs that are in common for all of us. We all have these same general needs, and people all over the planet, no matter what their life situation, has the same needs. So, of course, the physiological is going to be food, water, shelter, rest. Safety will have to be safety from harm. Um, Love and belonging, which is acceptance by others, relationships, healthy relationships. Esteem, which is pride in one's work and pride in oneself. Self-actualization is about being all that we can be, that urge that's within us. And self-transcendence, the very top, which is the oneness perspective or the integral perspective that we've been talking about these last several weeks, which is seeing beyond our individual well-being. It doesn't mean that we neglect it, because we still take care of ourselves, but it's also seeing beyond our own perspective of taking care of ourselves to reaching out and supporting others. So a holistic approach then is an approach that looks at all of these needs and also takes action socially, politically, economically, ecologically, and spiritually. And of course, we offer a spiritual teaching that really supports people in understanding the creative process of the mind, the idea of visioning, to catch a higher vision by going within and asking the deep questions and allow the inspiration of the universal mind of God to uplift us. But then also understanding that we can use spiritual law to empower those visions, to bring those visions into manifestation. And then, what is it that is the key that motivates us at this level to reach out and support others? And it goes back to the golden rule. And the golden rule, by the way, is not just a Christian rule of conduct. It is universal. Right, Denise? This is a universal. She comes from a different spiritual tradition called the Baha'is, which are so similar to us, and you'll find in so many ways, because there's one. Exactly, there's one. And so in the golden rule, then, do unto others as you would have others do unto you, is maybe not said the exact same way in all of these different traditions, but the essence is there. The essence is to care for others the way we care for ourselves. And and having that as a guiding principle, then, it automatically promotes social justice. Think about it. If we truly follow through with that conviction, then we are part of assuring social justice wherever we go. Ernest Holmes describes it so beautifully by saying, caring and compassion are the ties that bind us together in mutual understanding and in a unified attempt to uncover the divinity in each other. Isn't that what happens when we when we seek to understand others and seek to support them and empower them in being all they can be and living their lives from a place of awareness and understanding of principles and understanding the ways and the means, the skills that are necessary to thrive. So as we care for others, it's interesting what happens. As we care for others, something reciprocal takes place, right? It's a reciprocal type of justice, because as we care for others, we are cared for. And we may not know which direction it comes from, but we know that life travels in circles, the law of giving and receiving. And also, how many of you have noticed that when you do give of yourself, you receive so much in personal fulfillment? That's what I notice. Personal fulfillment. So the receiving is automatic. The other point I wanted to make is this idea of empowerment and conscious evolution, how this plays in this whole idea of a holistic approach. Again, the proverbial wisdom that again shows up in one form or another in all types of traditions is give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. This is a holistic approach, isn't it? It's like, yes, feed others who need the food, but also it's teach them the consciousness as well as the life skills that help them to thrive, and then help them to then become contributors to their communities. So a little bit about our spiritual tradition. It's a great review for those of you who have been here for a while, but for those who are new, our spiritual tradition, New Thought, Science of Mind, Ancient Wisdom, we have like multiple names that we give it, but it's a teaching of oneness. It's a universal teaching of spiritual principles that teaches that anyway, practicing these principles and implementing the spiritual practices teach us to lead a life of personal empowerment, self-responsibility, and self-determination. So by following the principles of the creative process, and this symbol right here is about the creative process that applies to both the universal presence of God, which we are a microcosm of. And so what it simply means, you see the downward arrow, is that ideas or visions, which are at the top, any inspiration, is worked upon by a universal law and becomes a manifestation in our lives. Just learning that simple principle transforms our lives, and it's a principle that can be taught to anyone, anywhere. So here's the thing, is that this philosophy then empowers us to change a limiting condition to one that's more expansive and fulfilling. And it's not only, again, for us, it's for all. So Lynn Twist, who founded the Hunger Fund, and I've referred to her before because she is such an inspiration to me. She's been around for a really long time. She started the Hunger Project years ago in conversation, I understand, with Buckminster Fuller, and I'm trying to remember who the other person was that you would recognize, but two really great enlightened beings. She had a conversation with, I know, Warner Earhart, because she had taken EST years ago. And she was inspired to make a difference. And so getting together with Buckminster Fuller and Warner Earhart, they together came up with this idea, this vision, caught this vision of how to co-create a world that works for everyone. And I didn't realize that term went all the way back to Buckminster Fuller. That was one of his favorite things to talk about, is a world that works for everyone. So she founded this hunger project. Most recently, the Pachamama project is something that she's working on as well. But she continues to come up with these beautiful ways of uplifting and supporting people all over the planet. And what they found in the early stages is just giving people food. When you send food to people in starving populations, it's actually detrimental in the long run if you keep just taking that one single-minded approach, or not a holistic approach, in other words. It created dependency because people stopped hunting and foraging for food that was more nutritious for them. It created malnutrition because people were then eating foods like sacks of flour, that lacked nutrition. And it also eroded their self-esteem because they had stopped being productive and finding ways to support themselves. So the Hunger Project learned pretty quickly to take a holistic approach. And that included a spiritual approach by teaching visioning skills. Lynn Twist is very much a part of the New Thought movement. And she's worked with, I understand, the IONS group, right, Michelle? Yeah, the Noetic Sciences group. Right. And so spiritual principles are taught, the same kinds of principles that we teach here in her Hunger Project. So they help the community create a vision, catch a vision, create a vision statement, and help them gain commitment to that, teach them life skills, leadership skills, and sustainable agriculture and nutrition principles and things like that to help them to really thrive. So I want to share a story with you to help this come alive a little bit. And it's a story about a 78-year-old woman by the name of Esperanza Morales. She lives in Mexico, and she had thought 6 years ago, before she got involved in this, this is her quote from her, that she would be unable to learn anything new at the stage of life that she was at. But now, through the Hunger Project Mexico, she sees herself as a vital part of a community vision. So Esperanza is a widow, a mother of 3, and she's learned spiritual skills, life skills, and so on through her 6-year partnership. And notice I said partnership with the Hunger Project Mexico, because this is a project that empowers. It doesn't just go in and give and then walk away. It's an ongoing project that empowers people in their communities. So it says Esperanza has worked to implement projects that provide sustainable solutions for hunger and poverty in her community. She recognizes now her value and her ability to learn and contribute. And she's now leading, because she's taken the leadership skills, she's now leading others in her community in work projects that fulfill the community vision. And here's the cool thing about what the Hunger Project does. They run what they call vision, commitment, and action workshops. Does that sound like us? Vision, commitment, and action workshops, along with skills and leadership training, as I mentioned before, in 4 states in Mexico. And this not only takes place in Mexico, there's a Hunger Project nearly everywhere all over the planet. And they're run in this same type of way of empowering individuals in the community, and often, sometimes they're men, but often they're women, to be the leaders in their community to implement these projects. So together with her neighbors, she's been working on constructing housing, developing what they call eco stoves, implementing family gardens, providing access to clean water, and protecting the earth by reducing waste through a recycling program. These are the cool things that are taking place. It's so important to know that things are going on the planet because of people who make a commitment like Lynn Twist has. And when I went on her site online, the staff is unbelievable. And they often partner people from wealthier countries to come down and work long term or even short term with these various communities, teaching them skills, helping them learn the principles of managing their resources and their money and so on. And so here's the thing, we looked at this hierarchy of needs of Maslow. We all, I don't care where we are on the planet, want to make a difference. People want to make a difference. They really, truly want to live from that self-transcendent place. It's an urge that's within all of us. And that urge leads to the kind of fulfillment, when we put it into practice, the kind of fulfillment that motivates us even through the greatest challenges. And I think of my own commitment as a minister and as being committed to conscious evolution and being committed to doing my part in transforming lives. When I think back years ago, when I first even found this teaching, I had no plans to be a minister, But what happened to me is when I made my commitment, first to practitioner training and being a practitioner, and then later to being a minister, my life changed in ways that I could not have envisioned or even planned for. This is a surrender. When we commit, we're surrendering ourselves to something far greater than who we are, who we think we are. Let's put it that way. Far greater than who we think we are. We're actually committing to realizing our potential. And so I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be able to even put together these messages every Sunday, because I grow. When I do the research and I learn about this, I grow in my awareness, and my heart expands and opens. And so I trust that there is something in this for you, some message. So think about what is the message for you? What is being stimulated in your own heart in this very moment as you contemplate this message of taking a holistic approach to protecting and empowering the vulnerable? Just take a moment of silence. What is mine to do? How am I inspired? And so let's breathe together. And so as we bring these visions that we catch out into the world, spirituality in action, we truly are co-creating a world that works for everyone. And so it is. You're welcome.